What's good, YouTube? Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn once again here on the podcast. My name is Kennard Vernon Stewart, and we're talking a little Auburn football this morning on a very crisp, very humid Tuesday morning, a couple of months away from the Advocare Classic. A lot of moving parts for the Auburn Tigers. I did a couple of videos this week, ruffled a little feathers with the alternate uniform video. Of course, I'm not an advocate of changing the Auburn uniform in any form or fashion. I do know that it is typical for college football teams to alter the uniform every now and then. LSU likes to do it. Texas A&M, pretty much all of the SEC teams except for Georgia and Alabama. Georgia occasionally does the blackout uniform. So, of course, I think the Auburn uniform is great. I think there is not necessarily any need to change the uniform on a week in and week out basis. Want to go ahead and get the Fearless and True Gang active here in the comment section this Tuesday morning as we're talking about Auburn football, a little recruiting for the Tigers, and we're talking about the quarterback situation at Auburn this morning as well. To kick things kicked off, we want to give a big shout out to the Auburn offensive line. Prince Wanogho, who is going to be, I think, a strong force on the offensive line this year. Probably one of the better athletes, even with all of the speed on the team. Probably one of the better, athletes on the team. Big guy, very agile on that offensive line. The Auburn Tigers definitely want to, if nothing else, be a little bit more consistent on that offensive line. And that thing is definitely going to be anchored by Prince Tega Wanogho Jr. out of Elmore, Alabama. 6'8", 200, probably about 300 pounds now. Came into Auburn as a four-star athlete at .9481. Has been a strong force on the offensive line, anchoring the offensive tackle. Will definitely provide some leadership. And guys, I feel like this is a guy who will be playing football on Sundays. He probably, depending on how this season goes and depending on the kind of impact that he will have, I would not doubt if he's not a late first round, early second round pick for the offensive line for the Auburn Tigers. And that will be a huge deal for the Tigers moving forward, who made some really huge recruiting strides at the offensive tackle, Javion Cohen out of Phoenix City, Alabama. Some huge gets for the Tigers post Big Cat weekend. Auburn jumped obviously from number 29 all the way up to number 13, and it's not, out of the realm of opportunity, even though some of the adverse perceptions of Auburn at this point, for the Tigers to possibly have a top 10 recruiting class. Because if you really look at it, some of the athletes that are on this particular roster recruiting class wise could actually gain some stars as the season, as this particular fall progresses in high school football. So really look out for this for the Auburn Tigers as some improvement, even within the class that they already have. Some guys could gain some stars and possibly make this recruiting class even more valuable than it is at the current. Because if you look at the current Auburn recruiting class for 2020, you have some serious talent in this particular recruiting class. You're talking about Trenton Simpson out of Mallard Creek, Charlotte, North Carolina, outside linebacker at .9733. There's no reason to think that with a stellar season that he can move up as far as being a five-star recruit. Then you talk about Wesley Steiner out of Houston County. I think that's the most recent. That is the most recent of the valuable recruits that Auburn has. Really catapulted that recruiting ranking with him at .9630. And, of course, Kobe Hudson out of Troup County. Now, for those of you who don't know much about Georgia, Troup County is in LaGrange, Georgia. That sits in between Auburn and Atlanta on Highway 85. Very good program, high school wise, there. So a lot of great strides with recruiting for the Auburn Tigers. You also talk about Tate Johnson, who is an offensive guard out of Callaway in Hogansville, Georgia. Hogansville is a little bit further down 85, going towards Atlanta, in between LaGrange and Noonan, Georgia, just before you hit Atlanta as you approach 285 to get to the Atlanta airport. So some really big strides for the Auburn Tigers here in the last couple of months. And we also have to make mention of the quarterback situation at Auburn. You're talking about Joey Gatewood and Bo Nix. At the current, if you think about Gus Malzahn wanting to get back to the run-pass option, my favorite in this particular situation is Joey Gatewood. One, he has the more experience as an Auburn Tiger as far as solidify. I'm sorry for the wind, guys. I'm actually standing outside right now. But either way, Joey Gatewood gives Auburn at the moment the best opportunity from a physicality standpoint to withstand the blows of the run-pass option. And out of the two quarterbacks, Joey Gatewood seems like the quarterback that is the more willing to take that contact. It seems like he wants to handle that particular contact. As a matter of fact, that is a part of his MO as a quarterback. Now, a lot of folks weren't necessarily impressed with Joey Gatewood in the spring game as a passer. He had a couple of floaters on the deep ball. But at the same time, when you think about a guy who is a true dual threat quarterback, passing lanes are created by the imbalance that they create in the run pass option. The good news for Joey Gatewood is he also has a lot of options running back wise with Boobie Whitlow, Cam Martin, Sean Shivers, DJ Williams, Harold Joyner, and we still, like I said in another video, we still don't know how Mark Anthony Richards' skill set, Mark Anthony Richards will be coming this fall. We still don't know how his skill set will transfer over to SEC play. We don't even know, based on the depth running back wise, if in fact that he might even redshirt this particular season. So we definitely are, Auburn is definitely in a great position quarterback wise, especially if you want to go with the run pass option with Joey Gatewood, or if by chance you want to go to a more passing oriented offense with Bo Nix, who has the ability to run the football if he has to. Now, that's not his go-to game. He is definitely at his core a pro style running back. And as those hits start to pile up, kind of like they did with Jarrett Stidham realized once he got over to the SEC that he really wasn't trying to be a dual threat quarterback in the sense that Gus Malzahn typically, sorry about the background noise, guys. I wanted to go ahead and get this video in while I was out. But either way, Joey Gatewood, Bo Nix will probably be that quarterback that I would go out on a limb and say, based on the physical size of Bo Nix, I just don't see him being a banger every play. I don't see him being like a Cam Newton or a Nick Marshall, or even what Joey Gatewood will probably be for this particular offense. I see him being more of a Jarrett Stidham type, but a little bit more willing to run the football for the Auburn Tigers than Jarrett Stidham was. So the one good thing I like about this is that, unlike in the past, we're not counting the Jarrett Stidham era, because we knew that Jarrett Stidham would be the starting quarterback. It was no battle. It was no question. But unlike in the past, like say in 2015 and 2016, where Gus Malzahn and his staff was very indecisive as to who the quarterback will be, at least at this point, Gus Malzahn, Kenny Dillingham, and all of those who are involved with the offense have narrowed it down to two guys that you can start formulating game plans with. And that's something that's going to be very important as you talk about facing an Oregon team who has obvious aspirations to make the college football playoff, have a lot of talent at the defensive line, we make note of Troy Dye, the linebacker for Oregon, and the elite secondary that Oregon brings in. So you definitely want to go ahead and start schematically planning for the Advocare Classic. And you really can't do that if you still trying to decide. Okay, this guy looks good this week. This guy looks good the next week. And then next thing you know, you're indecisive, going into game week. The quarterback battle is something that needs to be decided well before week 1. Okay, because you can't see the thing about getting the quarterbacks established is you got to establish a rhythm. The receivers respond differently depending on what quarterback is in the game, because the quarterbacks throw differently, the quarterbacks behave differently. So if they have become accustomed to a quarterback behavior, then that can start the solidarity with the running backs, the wide receivers, the H-backs, and the tight ends for the Auburn Tigers. So that's why it's very important for Auburn to get real decisive really quickly, because we're talking about a month and a half away from the Advocare Classic. So that quarterback position needs to definitely be solid. And based on some of Gus's past behavior, Gus and his coaching staff's past behavior versus the behavior that I'm seeing now, I think they have a little bit more of an idea of how they want to narrow this quarterback situation down. I'm favoring Joey Gatewood because of the experience, because of his presumed physicality, based on what I think Gus wants to do with the run-pass option, with him taking over play calling. This is going to be huge for the Auburn Tigers' decisiveness and go ahead and getting an established rhythm as to how he wants this offense to go. Once again, we're talking Auburn football this morning here on Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. I am your Auburn conversationist, Kennard Vernon Stewart, here on the podcast this morning. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn, where it is always great to be an Auburn Tiger on this particular channel, War Eagle.